All right, let's get right into it. I want you to picture something. The year is 869 AD. You and I, we're standing right in the middle of Tikal. I mean, this place is just carved out of the Guatemalan jungle. A massive city of stone and, honestly, pure ambition. For hundreds of years, this place was alive. You could hear it roaring, the sounds of 100,000 people just living, trading, worshiping. It was, no joke, the New York City of the ancient Americas. And then, poof, it just wasn't.
Suddenly, the stonemason's chisels just stop, mid-carving. The chants of the priests, from way up on top of those incredible pyramids, they just fade out. The roar from the ballgame, it echoes one last time, and then it's gone. The divine king, the ruler, he puts up one final stone monument, like a last entry in a diary, and then just silence. A complete, profound silence falls over this massive city. And that silence, it would last for 1,000 years.
So for the next 1,000 years, historians and explorers came up with all sorts of wild ideas. What happened? Where'd they go? The answers were, well, they were all over the place. Aliens? Some kind of super plague? Mass suicide? I mean, you name it. The Maya were basically treated like a magic trick, right? A whole civilization that just vanished. Poof, gone. And look, it's a great story, a real mystery, but it's the wrong story. It makes the Mayas sound like passive victims, but the real story, the truth, is so much more active. And honestly, so much more fascinating.
You see, just changing that one little word changes everything. It reframes the whole mystery. Because the Maya didn't disappear, not at all. They are still here, millions of them. So the real puzzle, the question we should be asking, isn't about some supernatural vanishing act. No, it's about a choice, a deliberate, conscious decision made by millions and millions of people to look at everything they had built, these magnificent cities, these incredible temples, and just walk away.
So to figure out why they would leave, we gotta understand what was holding their entire world together in the first place. See, Maya society, it wasn't really built on stone, even though it looks that way. It was built on an idea, a kind of grand bargain, you could call it, a promise between the people and the gods. And the king, he was the living, breathing embodiment of that contract.
And right at the heart of this whole deal was this figure called the Kuhul Ajau, the Divine Lord. Now, this wasn't like being a president or a prime minister. This was something else entirely. The king claimed he was directly descended from the gods. I mean, he was literally the center of the universe, the axis the whole cosmos spun around. His body was sacred, his blood was divine. And it was his job, his actions and rituals that kept everything in balance.
So what were the terms of this cosmic contract? Well, they were pretty straightforward. The king's side of the bargain was huge. He promised to keep the cosmos in order. He'd perform these sacred rituals, and yeah, that often involved his own blood, and in doing so, he would make sure the sun came up, the seasons changed, and, this is the big one, that the rains came for the maize. Without that, everyone starves. And what did the people do in return? They provided tribute, they provided the labor to build those incredible temples, and they gave him their complete loyalty. And for hundreds and hundreds of years, this system worked.
But a promise that's held for 1,000 years, well, it was about to be broken. And not by the people, no. The contract was going to be broken by the kings and by the sky itself. Their entire world, this whole system, was about to be put under a kind of stress you can barely even imagine.
Okay, first we really have to wrap our heads around the sheer scale we're talking about here. At its absolute peak, the Maya lowlands might have been home to something like 16 million people. 16 million! That is a staggering number, and every single one of them depended on their farming system working perfectly, and every single one of them was tied into that cosmic contract with the king. When you've got a system that big, there is just no room for error.
And well, the system was already starting to show some serious cracks. I mean, to feed all those millions of people, you have to clear a lot of jungle. That led to massive deforestation, soil erosion. Pretty soon, the amount of food they could grow started to drop. And at the exact same time, the divine kings, who were supposed to keep order, they started turning on each other. The rivalry between the city-states got worse and worse, escalating into all-out, incredibly destructive wars. So, the two main pillars holding up their whole society, the land itself and the leadership, were both starting to crumble.
And then came the knockout punch, the final devastating blow. Scientists have looked at things like lake bed sediment and formations in caves, and what they found is just mind-blowing. A series of catastrophic droughts that lasted for decades at a time. We're not talking about a dry summer. We are talking about rainfall dropping by as much as 70%. 70. Remember that contract? The kings had one single
sacred promise they absolutely had to keep: bring the rain. And now, the sky just went silent.
Now, this is so important to understand. This didn't happen overnight. It wasn't one single event. It was more like a slow, cascading failure, like dominoes falling over 150 years. It started out on the edges of their territory back in the late 700s. Then it just rolled, slowly, right across the Maya heartland. The biggest cities, Tikal, Calakmul, they went quiet. One after another, the lights of the classic Maya world just went out. The whole political system just disintegrated.
And that brings us to the real climax of the story. Because what happened next? It wasn't a mystery. It was a revolution. But not the kind you're thinking of, with swords and spears. No, this was a revolution of the feet.
I mean, just try to put yourself in the shoes of a regular Maya farmer for a second. The divine king, this god on earth, he promised you rain, but your family is starving because of the drought. He promised you order, but your village is constantly under threat from these brutal wars. He promised stability, but the world you know is literally falling apart around you. At that point, the promise is broken, the contract is void, the whole deal is off.
So, let me ask you, what do you do when the entire system you live under fails to keep its most basic promises? What do? You leave. You get up and you leave. The Maya people didn't just vanish into thin air. They made a choice. They walked away from the cities. They walked away from the divine kings. They walked away from a broken system that just wasn't working for them anymore.
And this was a deliberate choice, a strategy for survival. They abandoned those huge, fragile cities for a completely different way of living. They scattered into smaller communities, ones that were more sustainable, ones they could govern themselves. They ditched the whole top-down system of the divine king for something more flexible, more decentralized. It was a radical, bottom-up transformation of their entire society.
And right there, that's the real story of the so-called Maya collapse. It's not a story about a civilization disappearing. It's a story about a civilization transforming. It's a story of incredible continuity.
Think about this. Today, right now, there are 7 to 8 million Maya people living in their ancestral homelands. Let that sink in. They aren't remnants of some lost civilization. They are the civilization, continuing, adapting, and thriving in our modern world.
And you can see the proof of this continuity everywhere you look. I mean, over 28 distinct Mayan languages are still spoken every single day. Up in the highlands of Guatemala, you have traditional day keepers who still use the ancient 260-day sacred calendar. That's an unbroken thread of knowledge going back thousands of years. The patterns they weave into their clothes, the ceremonies they perform for the harvest, all of it connects directly back to that ancient world. The Maya didn't disappear. They endured.
So, you see, the Maya collapse was never really a mystery about a lost people. It's a powerful story about resilience. It's about a people who had the courage to abandon a failing system in order to survive. And that leaves us with a pretty profound question, one that echoes all through human history, doesn't it? What does it actually take for a people to look at the world they've so carefully built and decide that it's finally time to just walk away?